Hi everyone, welcome to episode 11 of Hear Her Roar. Things are looking a little bit different this afternoon. Firstly, Rach can't join us because she has work commitments. Secondly, we're not recording live from the Mic'd Up Studios in Parramatta, and we are recording a little bit before Thursday, but we're still coming to you live at our usual time. But this afternoon, you may have noticed a familiar face if you are a regular on the West Tigers TV channel, or if you only come along for Hear Her Roar. You may not have seen this face before, but I'm very excited to have Coach Adel of Coach's Corner and Claws Out fame joining me this afternoon to chat everything NRLW ahead of round one this weekend. So, Adele, thank you so much and welcome to Hear Her Roar.
Thank you. It's always nice to be on debut somewhere. So this is my debut here. Bit nervous, but ready to go. Excited.
You're nervous. Gary's been feeding me all day trying to get me revved up for this one, so it's
Well,
all good.
Eddie and Rob have only been the other two guests, so you don't have much to live up to. Don't worry.
Yeah, so there's so much to talk about with the start of the NRLW season. Plus, we usually do a little bit of a quick wrap up of the boys as well. So we'll jump straight into it. So Adele, for those people that aren't regulars to Claws Out or the Coach's Corner and are just seeing you for the first time on Hear Her Roar, can you tell us a little bit about your background and yeah, why you're here today, I guess?
Well, we'll only go rugby league. So I've been coaching rugby league probably since 2013 now. So it's been 13 years in the game from a coach's perspective. So been doing it for a long time at a representative level, I guess you can call it, in the sort of pathways coaching system. And that initially was in the men's game. But then during COVID, I got lucky enough to get an opportunity to come over to the West Tigers. It was by complete chance. At the time, the general manager of football was a good friend of mine. And all the NRL basically was the only thing running. But then the Harvey Norman women's competition got back up and running. And just joined the club in 2021, I think it was, and basically have been with the club. It might have been earlier than that, actually. 2020 it might have been. So, was in the women's program basically all the way through to 2024.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, so that's where I am now. And obviously back in the men's game over the last couple of years. But I guess my love and passion, I'm a West Tigers fan through and through. So being a part of the club for that period both had its ups and downs because
Yeah.
obviously the men's team wasn't traveling as well. But yeah, it's a really important part of my life was that period with the women's program. So very keen to see them go this weekend.
Yeah. Now you said that there was some ups and some downs during that time, but there was a pretty big up during that time that you had a very, very large hand in. Would you like to tell everybody what that was?
Um, I'm not really someone to talk about it much, but no, I mean, I got pretty lucky to be a part of the women's program when we won the Harvey Norman's Women's Premiership. People can say by default, I got the opportunity to coach the side at the back end of the year, and we went on a pretty hot run and yeah, won a competition, which was, to me, still the highlight of my coaching life. And I don't think it'll ever be surpassed. I don't think it doesn't matter what I do. That period, that day will forever live in my mind. And yeah, it was a special day for anyone that was a part of the West Tigers program and people that, we had a lot of fans that, West Tigers fans that followed the girls at that time and we enjoyed it all. I mean, Auntie Linda still cries when she talks to me about it. So
She sure
yeah,
does.
it
She
was a
sure
great
does.
time.
Amazing. Yeah. So that was a huge moment in the girls' history. And I guess it's sort of what eventually led to us getting into the NRLW. But before we jump in and talk a little bit specifically about the NRLW, uh, normally on the coach's corner, for people that don't know, you sort of analyze the game a little bit, but you didn't get a chance to do that this weekend. Did you still get a chance to watch the game?
I put myself through the pain of doing that on Monday. Look, I didn't think we played as bad. You know what? I think the conditions were probably a little bit worse than what was appeared to be on TV. I mean, it really slowed Newcastle down, and Newcastle are one of the best attacking teams in the competition. So I'm guessing the field must have been really heavy. The conditions must have been really poor, and the TV mustn't have told the tale of what it actually was like. But look, I thought we defended well, but I just think we're so far down on confidence at the moment, and we would never accuse the players of sort of losing belief, but they just must not be feeling their best at the moment. And a few boys banged up. You can talk about reasons and excuses, but in the end, we probably should have won that game on the weekend. So an opportunity missed, but we get a chance to do it again this week. I was hammered the other week when I said our season was over. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be really tough for us from now on in. But whilst ever you got a little bit of hope, you can cling to it as much as you can.
Yeah, that's right. We'll talk a little bit about the guys a little bit later, and Rachel actually has a question for you that she sort of asked me to put to you around specifically what you were talking about. But um, you said at the end of the sorry, so last year and this year you've been up in Brisbane at South Logan. How's it all going up there, and how's the season going for you guys?
It's probably, Kelly, the most enjoyable coaching I've had for a very, very long time. I've learned more this year than I've ever learned as a coach, and that says a lot considering how much education I've had over the last 10 years. But, our head coach, Carmichael Hunt's the best coach I've ever dealt with and been a part of his staff. Has been a big learning curve for me this year, and I'm really enjoying that at the moment. Season's a little bit up and down. It is a little bit difficult because obviously we are affected. We are an affiliate club with the Broncos, so
Mhm.
there's times where we don't get players till the night before we know they're playing with us. So it has some sort of an effect, but all in all, I think we're having a pretty decent season. We're sitting in a familiar position to everybody in the West Tigers. We're in
I did
ninth.
notice that.
We're
Yeah,
in ninth at
lucky
the
number
moment,
nine.
but we're one of the few teams that's only had one bye this year. We had a good win on the weekend, and we get another home game this week where we come up against a second place Dolphins. So it's a big week coming up for us. But yeah, I'm loving it. It's a great club to be a part of. There's a small tie to the West Tigers. Obviously, we're the
Mhm.
Magpies, so there's a small tie to that. But yeah, love my time here and love living in the Sunshine State.
Amazing. So, one question I'll ask before we jump in to start talking about the girls' game is what is the biggest thing that you miss about the West Tigers program?
Well, I mean, the reality is it's not the West Tigers program; it's the NRLW space. I mean,
Right.
that was the most important thing to me. It's something that it does make me emotional. I've talked about it in the coach's corner and pause out podcasts we've had in the past. It's something that was really important to me. I mean, I dedicated so much of my life to that. I made a lot of sacrifices to be a part of that program, and yeah, I just miss. You know what? It's not even about missing it. It's just the fact that we haven't had any success. I truly believe we should have. We've had 3 wasted years in the women's program. We won't go too deep into it, but I think we've missed our mark so much on what we should have done over the last 3 years, and it's is what it is. But yeah, I just think it's the fact that I didn't get the opportunity to have an impact as much as I probably should have, and I probably wanted to. But yeah,
Hmm.
you just move on with it. But yeah,
Yeah.
definitely miss a part of the program. Obviously, there's not many of the players that are still there, but still miss those girls. And obviously, I'll have opportunities here and there to chat to them. But yeah, definitely miss that for sure.
Yeah, yeah, they are a pretty amazing group of girls, and every time we get to link up with them in any way, they're always so open and welcoming. Very, very different experience to the men's team. I guess that just shows the real difference in the two competitions and where they're at in terms of professionalism and things like that. But we've just always had such an amazing experience with the girls. So one of the really unique things about your career in rugby league is that you have had the opportunity to coach both men and women's programs to quite a high level and had success in doing it. As you just said, you were the coach of the Harvey Norman Premiership winning side. You've also you remained in the Pathways program for a couple of years before moving up to Queensland. What are the biggest differences that you've noticed or for yourself between coaching men's and women's teams?
Well, personally, I don't approach it any differently, and I believe that's the key to it all. I don't see any difference in how I prepare and how I coach. Um, Obviously, there's the natural genetic differences between, your speed and power, but that's pretty much it for me. I don't treat the players any differently. The only thing I guess, and it's going to sound so weird, but it probably won't to a female because as men, we don't understand this. It's the education I got to learn about women's health and how important that is to performance of the players. So that's really the only thing from my perspective that I found that I had to make adjustments to. But in regards to football perspective, and I think it's the mistake all the coaches make, especially I even think some of the female coaches make that mistake is you don't treat them any differently. You coach them exactly the same way you'd coach a men's program or a men's team. And that's my way of always looking at it. And yeah, that's to me. So yeah, I'm not sure if I've answered the question for you, but that's the reality of it for me. I don't see it any differently when I coach them.
No, I guess that's really valuable insight because I think we hear so often of the comparison between the men's and the females game and this is different and that's different. And we're going to sort of dive into a couple of the rules and structural differences a little bit later, just for people that don't know the game that well and they're maybe coming into their first season of NRLW and need a little bit more insight. But for me, as you said, as a female, it makes sense. We have, very different physiology to men and things like that. But I guess as it makes sense structurally that in terms of the game planning and getting fitness and preparation, there should be no reason why you would coach females differently to males. I guess for that was just a really interesting question that Rach was keen to sort of hear about as well as to whether you did have different approaches to the two of them. And I think you've sort of probably already answered this question a little bit already, but do you have a preference of which you would prefer to do moving forward or
Yeah, I'd never coach in the women's game again. Geez, I'm going to say this out loud. Yeah, unless it was the West Tigers NRLW job. I mean, I've said that to people privately as well. I love coaching the men's game. I think Um, the fact that I walked into the women's program at the West Tigers at the time was a blessing to me. But yeah, from a passion perspective, I love coaching in the men's game. I think it suits my coaching style a lot more. But at the same time, I feel like that if I did bring that in the women's game, it would only be the passion of coaching the club I absolutely love. So yeah, that's probably the best way to answer it. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've talked about that with people in the past about moving back to Sydney and whatnot. The only reason I'd probably move back to Sydney is, to be back at the club. But yeah, that's a long way gone at the moment. So we won't even entertain that thought at the moment, Kelly.
well, you never know, the universe does crazy things. So, never shut anything off to the universe. You never know when it's going to throw a curveball at us.
I will
Um,
say, I will say, I think coaching females, there is one difference in regards to coaching from a player's perspective, is the female players are a lot more inquisitive, um, and when you explain something to a female player, I think they understand it a lot quicker than a male player can, unless those guys that, your spine players and those that have really good football IQ, probably you don't have to explain it to them as much. Um, but then there's also the comparison of the gap between the good and the bad players in the men's game, no matter where you're at, probably is a little bit closer than it is in the female game. And then there's also that part of the female players, and this is the part I think people still don't understand around the females space, is the girls that are still at the highest level. I mean, I think in the women's game, there is players, I'd say maybe two or three players in the women's game don't have many weaknesses, where I think there's a lot of players in the women's game that still have extensive weaknesses in their game. And that makes them much more coachable because they want to learn and they want to develop no matter how old they are and how long they've been in the game. So that's probably the other little difference in regards to coaching the two, which sometimes as a coach can make it a little bit easier for you to want to coach the women's game. So there's a bit of an insight into that as well.
Yeah, yeah, that was one thing that Charmaine spoke about when she was on our pod was that the girls are just always so eager to learn. Even the likes of your Kezi apps and your Sarah Togatukis that, as you said, have been around the game for a long time. They know that they've still got areas that they need to improve on, and they're always keen to work out how they can be better in order to help the team be better as a whole.
Absolutely.
So this year the NRLW is going into its second season with 10 teams. So 10 teams, 10 rounds.
12? 12?
Is it?
I think
Oh
it's 12
gosh, hang
teams.
on. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. It is two. Yes, my
I'm a nerd.
goodness.
I'm an NRLW nerd, as much as if people don't understand.
I yeah, I've just sat and literally written out every team's name over the last couple of days looking at the draw and things like that. But you're right. Um, There's also been changes to the salary cap contracts and talk of moving the game closer to that professional kind of full-time game in comparison to the men's. What do you think of the direction that the NRLW is heading at the moment? Is it moving too fast? Is it not moving fast enough? Are they not keeping an eye on particular things that you believe?
Here comes the controversy. No, it's not moving too fast. I think the players, the RLPA, I think the game is letting the women's game down at the moment. I think the way the salary cap is structured, and some of the rules around the salary cap, I mean, yes, it benefits the girls in the sense that they can earn a little bit more because obviously with job opportunities. But what it has done is created an unbalanced competition. I mean, the reality is the rich clubs are rich, and I'm now no longer in that space, so I can sort of say this openly. The rich clubs are rich, and the poor clubs are poor, and everything we've seen out of the competition last year. I don't think there's going to be too many changes to positions and clubs and where everyone stands. I think it's going to be pretty similar to what it looked like last year. And with the new CBA coming in, I think it's a really important time. I think there's going to be some clashes. I think if the NRL does its due diligence and speaks to the clubs and talks about what the women's game needs to go to the next level, it needs to balance salary cap. And yes, that's going to mean I think the salaries are going to have to improve, um, which is going to be a challenge in itself because at the moment, from what I understand, the state of origin obviously creates big eyes in regards to ratings and whatnot, but the NRLW is still in that growth space. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge. But at the same time, what it's doing to the competition, well, it's just unfair. The competition is not right. There's too much that goes on behind the scenes, and I know the ins and outs of the salary cap in the NRLW space. I mean, some of the squads we're seeing at the moment, well, two of the squads in particular, it's impossible to fit those under the cap. If you're going off uh, player values, like obviously the NRL has that with the men's game where you do have a value of a player that sort of you got to abide by it. But it seems like in the women's game they don't have that because, yeah, it's basically it would be impossible to put those two top squads together under the current salary cap. But obviously there's the external aspect to it that makes the difference. And it's important to point out that I don't think anyone's breaking any rules. It's just that's the way that the structure is at the moment, and it's just not the right way to do it. But hey, who are we to talk about that, eh? Other people are smarter than us, apparently.
Yeah. That was a big thing that Rach and I have spoken about around contracts, where in the past the players could really only sign for single year contracts. So you sort of had a little bit more movement at the end of each season. Players would shuffle around depending on where they got a contract. But now we've shifted to these multi-year contracts. It feels like those big clubs that have had that well-established squads have already locked players in long term before they've gone to market. So they're not really able, other clubs really aren't able to get in and have a go at those particular players.
I
Do you
don't think
agree, or
that's
you don't? I don't
no,
think
no.
you.
So,
Yeah.
so the long-term contracts are not an issue. I mean, at the end of the day, you can sign anybody to a long-term contract, and we can do that with our players. We've done that with our players as well. So, and I don't know how much people know about the rules of the salary cap. Basically, clubs can employ players, and that doesn't fit into the salary cap. So the question mark becomes: is player A who's valuated at, as a, we'll use figure 100 to come to our club. Um, and that's all they're going to get. They're not going to get an extra job with our club. But then, another club evaluates them at 120,000, but splits that into a $60,000 or 60, we'll use the number 60
Hmm.
under the cap, and then offers them a job at 60 as well. You can't compete with that because from a salary cap perspective, all that really matters is the 60, not the 100. So that's where you're finding other clubs are able to find external work. I mean, we do see at our club, I think we've got Christian, Sulla and Kezi work for the club, but we're a club that can't afford to employ 12 to 13 players like
Hmm.
some of the other clubs do. So, yeah, it's just one of those things that you just can't compete with it whilst ever the rules are whatever they are because, yeah, the reality is even though, like I said, player A is evaluated by four of the small clubs to be worth, I'll just say the big number, $120,000 a year. If their current club only pays them $60,000 under a salary cap and then provides them other income, you can't compete with that. And that's the current rules of the game. And that's why
Right.
players allegedly come out, and I'm critical of those players. I'll openly say it. Come out and talk about the fact that why would I go to other clubs for a certain amount of money? It's you're only getting that certain amount of money because it's being topped up. So yeah, there's a bit of an insight for some NRLW fans as why it looks like the way it looks like at the moment.
Yeah, no, it's all really quite interesting when you sort of lift the lid and you dive a little bit deeper underneath. And it's really helpful to have this insight. It's great for me as well to learn all these ins and outs. But you've sort of mentioned a few things already. What do you think? the NRL needs to focus on in order to really make the NRLW a really strong competition and help it reach its potential?
They've got to stand their ground. They've basically got to tell these clubs, and it's going to be hard because there's going to be some contracts that flow over into the new CBA. Um, so, all the ones that are currently contracted, well, you're going to have to stand by those contracts at the moment, but they're just going to have to take away basically the job opportunities. And obviously, yes, clubs can still do third party deals like the NRL, but they've got to be external from the clubs. Basically, the salary cap needs to mirror what the NRL salary cap is. I mean, everyone's critical of the NRL salary cap because sometimes clubs can't keep their players, and the idea is to balance the competition. The reality is we've seen this year I think the Roosters had what, 10 Origin girls?
Yeah.
You'd never see that in the men's game. Like no club would be able to carry 10 Origin players in their salary cap. So it's impossible. And that's what we basically have to do. And yes, it's going to mean clubs like the Roosters and the Broncos are going to suffer, but for the good of the competition and the game and the growth of the NRLW, well, it just has to happen. And that's the reality of it. I don't think there's any other solution. It may mean that players don't get as much money, and it's going to mean some players are going to have the pool of money is going to have to spread. But what we've got to think about is what the game looks like in 10 years' time and not worry about what's happening, in 2027 and 2027, sorry, 2027 and 2028, because, part of being a part of the women's game for me was understanding my role. And my role was to be a part of the growth of the game. And that's where I think some people in the game at the moment are not understanding that.
Right. No, that's really, yeah, the whole Origin thing was a big thing Rach and I spoke about for those whole 6 weeks while Origin was on, and it just continued getting worse each week. If a player dropped out, it was just automatically replaced with another Rooster. Like, how convenient. But I mentioned before that you said that there's no real differences in the way that you coach men's versus women's, but there's still a number of rule differences between the two games. Can you run us through a couple of the high level things that, the average fan again might not know and be wondering on, out there on Sunday calling for a six again when they don't get called?
Yeah, so there's no six to go rule in the women's game, which I actually think is ludicrous. Well, I'm not saying it's ludicrous, but I actually think the six to go rule would suit the women's game more than it suits the men's game. Now, the excuse that's used, and I can only assume, and I'm assuming this, that it's the players that have asked for this. I'm assuming. I'm not saying it's right, but because the argument was always that the players aren't full time, yet New South Wales Cup, Queensland Cup, Jersey Flag, SG Ball, Harold Matthews all play with the six to go rule. Ron Massey Cup play with the six to go rule. So, excuse me, and they're not full time players. So, I don't think that's can be the excuse. So I'm not sure why we don't have the six to go rule, but I actually think it's the perfect rule for the women's game because one of the things we always noticed about the women's game, and it's one thing that I would do coaching differently, is the ruck was always so much slower. And the ruck, so we would coach the players to slow the ruck down, push the boundaries as much as you can, because without the six to go rule, the referees were reluctant to blow, 20, 25 penalties a game. So I think that's one rule. Obviously, the women's game has 10 interchanges, not eight, would be another one. In the women's game, there's a 20-50 and a 40-30, not a 20-40 and a 40-20. I don't think there's any other rules besides that. I mean, you might be able to help me. You're the
Just more the structural of the 70-minute game. So two
yeah. So it's
35-minute halves instead of two 40-minute halves.
yeah, 35-minute halves, which again is weird because at one stage we used to have international rugby league would play for 80 minutes. Again, I don't know the theory around why you do that. I mean, we talked about earlier. I was involved in a game of rugby league that went for 80 minutes in a Harvey Norman grand final. I think it's something the girls are more than capable of handling at the moment. So yeah, that's probably the other change. But yeah, from a rules perspective, that's as far as I know the only differences with the rules.
Yeah, I think the big one is the six again. So people out there on, at a game, calling for six agains and things when they don't exist in the girls' game. And yeah, currently the NRLW side still only picks 17 players, where the men's game's now moved up to 19. But that's
I'll
not
tell
a
you an interesting
huge.
fact as well, Kelly, and this is where a lot of this used to not make sense to me. In the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership, there's only 8 interchanges, not 10.
So it's different to the
Different to
NRLW.
the NRLW. So, anyways, we won't go there.
It just there's a lot of things that the NRL that doesn't make sense to me. And I'm beginning at doing this podcast, I'm finding more and more of them, that's for sure. Um, but yeah, so this weekend we do have round one, and I've spent some time having a look at the draw just to sort of have a look at, you know, how it's panned out. I don't know whether the NRL has said that they've used AI to do the NRLW draw as well as the men's, but for me, the men's draw makes absolutely zero sense this year. But for anybody that hasn't had a chance to look at the draw too closely, we actually play our first three games away. Thankfully, the first one is in Parramatta, so we do get an opportunity to head out there, but it is a double header for the Eels. So ticket prices are usual NRL ticket prices, which hinders probably a lot of NRLW fans from just coming along, considering the NRLW Eels play us and the men's play Manly, which, doesn't really make a lot of sense. Then we go to North Queensland and Brisbane before we come home to play the Roosters in our first home game at Leichardt. This year, in terms of double headers, we have one all season. So it's not until the second or the third last game where we play the Warriors in NRLW, and then the men's team plays Parramatta at CommBank. Uh, the Roosters, the Dragons, and the Eels all have three double headers, so they're going to obviously be drawing a much bigger crowd to their NRLW games, even if it is only the second half of the game as the crowds start to come in. Five other teams have two double headers, and where we have one. In saying that, the Poor Sharks ended up with none. The Poor Sharks also ended up with two Thursday night games to start their season, which I think they've sort of copped the rawest end of the deal. This year, Magic Round is in Wagga Wagga, which is 4.5 hours away from Sydney. Not really the easiest place for people to get to. It was in Newcastle last year, so a little bit easier to travel to. And then our last game of the season is a 5:40 kickoff on a Friday night at Leichhardt Oval, which is just, again, a super random time on a Friday afternoon. And then to top all of this off, we have a number of Harvey Norman games that overlap with the NRLW games. So there's just a whole heap of question marks for me around around the draw. So I've just got a couple of questions around that. Do you think the NRL should be doing more to try to create more doubleheader opportunities for clubs in order to build the game?
Well, I think there's a couple of points in unpacking all that. So firstly, from a double header perspective, I think we because our grounds can't facilitate double headers, especially Leichhardt, it's basically impossible to have. Well, I know Leichhardt, for example,
We
cannot
did
have
have
double.
one last year against the Titans. It was both
Yeah,
both
we did
yeah,
too.
we
I
played
think so.
both sides played the Titans.
So I think that was because it was a day game. I remember a game in the Harvey Norman. We played a double header with the NRL when we were in the Harvey Norman. They would set up marquees out the back for us, for the girls to stand out the back. So my presumption is they did the same thing that day, and they had, but it was in the daytime. Like we were literally doing it at night in the dark.
Yeah.
But yeah, the grounds just don't facilitate that. That's my presumption in that regard.
Mhm.
Um, Look, from a coach's perspective, I never cared. Like, it didn't matter whether we were playing in front of 100 people or 1,000 people. For us, it was about trying to get the best performance out of the players as much as we can. So yeah, it's from a fan's perspective, especially those that are passionate about the NRLW. It's probably one of those things where we'd prefer to have a lot more double headers for our teams. But yeah, from a coach's angle, it's something that never really mattered to us. I mean, it was always nice for the players to be able to play in front of as big a crowds as you could. Obviously, one of the weird ones that starts to happen now because of the commercial aspect of the TV deals is when they start to play after the men's games.
Mhm.
And it was always hard to keep the fans, but the reality is that's just where the game is at the moment. It's one of those things that as it builds and as it builds, it's going to have its own identity. But yeah, it's just I guess what the game is at the moment. And from a players and coaches perspective, one of the things we used to always talk about is, we don't let that affect us, and we just concentrate on performing and try to win games of football, and that was always going to help us. So yeah, coach perspective, it doesn't really make too much of a difference, but I can understand the frustration from a fan's perspective for sure.
Yeah, I guess it is just that sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, I guess if if we want to go to both games, it becomes a very big weekend.
Yeah.
So this weekend, heading to Cogra on Saturday to watch the boys at 5:30, and then heading to Parramatta on Sunday to watch the girls. And then there's one week where we've got the boys down in Canberra and then the girls somewhere else. And so it does it. I guess it is. It's very selfish on my part to to want to have some more double headers. But if if it doesn't make any difference to the coaching staff and the players, then that's really what matters. And we should just keep trying to make as much effort as possible to get to as many games as we can.
I think the other thing for the game is it's important to understand like this the 5:40 Friday night game at the end of the year, that'll be a TV thing. So it's all about fitting the TV time slots for the game. You say Cronulla got two Thursday night games. The players and the coaches and the fans may not like it, but the club's going to love it because they're in prime time. So they get full
Yeah.
exposure from that perspective. Like it's actually one of the spots from a club perspective you want to be a part of because that is a prime time spot. The 5:40 game, I'm presuming it'll be week one of the finals. There'll be the 8 o'clock game, so they want to fill a time in at the Friday night game. So a lot of that is about the commercial opportunities for the game to be able to expose the NRLW as much as they can. So, I think that's just something that NRLW players, fans, coaches, we all need to understand that it's just a part of making sure that we're getting the exposure that we deserve, or they deserve. I'm not we at the moment, but yeah, that's which can be frustrating when playing at 11:50 on a Sunday morning. Probably not the ideal time slot to be playing, but that's just the reality of what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about the scheduling of, so it's not only the NRLW and the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership that we're seeing this, we're also seeing it in the NRL and knock-on effect cup, where games are scheduled either at the same time or very close to the same time in completely different venues. What are your thoughts on that?
My mother always said, "If you got nothing nice to say, don't say nothing." But look, let's not talk about New South Wales Rugby League scheduling because I had to deal with it for years. It's not ideal, and it is what it is. Let's just say
Okay.
that.
Yeah. No, Rach and I have already, we've gone to town on it a little bit, and I was just curious on what your thoughts are. And by the sounds of it, very similar kind of sentiment. Just, yeah, just does not make any sense at all. But anyway, as we said, this weekend, after more than 290 days since our last game for the girls, we will get to watch the NRLW side run out against the Eels at CommBank Stadium at, yeah, as you mentioned, 11:50 a.m. And then the Harvey Norman girls, they've actually pushed out the start for that a little bit. So they don't start till 3 o'clock now in Kellyville. So quick 20-minute drive up the road should be doable to get to both. We were planning on getting to as much as we could of the Harvey Norman game after the NRLW game. But anyway, I digress. So Craig Sandercock has named the same starting 17 as he did for the trials. So Racine and Lasana will be in the halves and Caitlin Turnbull will be in fullback. The back row combination will be Kezi Apps and Shaylee Bent. Rikia Horn will return into her centre position. Christian Pio will actually start off the bench after missing a lot of last year due to injury, alongside Tara, Faith, and then new up and comer who we've brought down from Queensland in Namoy Gesa will wear the number 17 jersey in what will likely be her NRLW debut, which is very exciting. Rachel sent through a few notes before I jump to you for a couple of questions. So she's fangirling big time over Namoy. She has sort of become Namoy's number one fan. So she wasn't expecting to see her being named in the first round team. Even Charmaine mentioned when we had her on the pod that she expected Namoy to get into the lineup eventually, but didn't think it would be round one. So Rach is really keen because she believes it shows what an amazing prospect she is, and obviously the impact that she's had on the coaching staff. She's very excited about the back row of Kezi Holly and Shaylee Bent, and is keen to see the new combination of Racine and Lasana. She believes that there could be a key matchup between Rakia, who's going to be hungry for some football, and Rory Owen, which she thinks will be the matchup to watch from the game. What has stood out for you from the team list? Would you have made any changes to that particular lineup?
Well, it's hard because obviously the coaches have been there week in, week out of preseason. So, it's hard to make a judgment call. I mean, you're
Yeah.
making a judgment call blind, not knowing all the informations and the facts. I mean, for me, Christian Pierre is one of my favourite players to coach. So she was always in my starting team. She was always the player I lent on. I she'd get big minutes playing for me. Like some of the stuff I've seen from her in the last couple of years, I sort of sit there and question what the coaches were doing, but that's another argument. The young lady that Rachel really likes, so I actually watched her play in the BMD Premiership Grand Final last year and actually sent a text down to Sydney about her. She was the most impressive player on the field that day. I mean, there was a young girl called Evelyn Roberts who's playing for the Bulldogs this year. She was the player of the match in that game, but um, to describe her, she's an outside back. I think she can play in the back row as well, but she's probably something we've lacked in the past is aggression and that little bit of mongrel
Hmm.
and I was going to say a different word, but I shouldn't use that word. But she's someone that looks like she doesn't fear anybody, and she really impressed me. So when I seen the club sign her, I remember at the time I sent someone a message saying good signing. It wasn't complimentary to the other ones at the time, but anyways, so she's a really good signing for me. Yeah, again, not knowing enough about what's going on, I'm very surprised Brooke's not in the 17. I mean, to
Yeah.
me, Brooke was, one of she before injuring herself. I think she was just on a trajectory that was going to see her progress into one of the elite forwards in the game.
Hmm.
It looks to me like they've brought out the new toys. I mean, all the new signings pretty much are in their position that they've picked them in their positions to play, and they're going to give them first shot, which I kind of understand. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that you can't sit there and judge until you start to see them play, and that's what we're going to do this week. Disappointing Rach. I don't think Rakia and Rory will have a match up this week. Actually, remind me to tell you a story about Rory Owen at some stage,
Okay.
um, and it's going to disappoint you because I've seen in the trial Rakia is actually playing on the left side. She's normally a right side centre, but she's playing on the left, and Rory plays on the left for Parramatta. So I don't
Ah,
think they'll come up against each other.
right. Yeah.
Again, which is surprising because I know Rakia loves to play on the right, but obviously she's looks like she's going to play on the left this year. Same with Kezi. Kezi's playing on the right edge this year, which
Hmm.
again I used to have these arguments in the club all the time. She's the best left edge back rower in the competition, so I don't know why anyone would want to move her, but they do it at Origin, they do it at international level, and obviously we're doing it at club level now. So yeah, some changes, but I'm looking forward to it and seeing how the girls go. Ray would be probably someone I suits my coaching more than anything. Like coaching her in the past has been one of the most enjoyable things for me. So I love the fact that she's the club, and she's the type of player we need at the moment. And
Hmm.
from everything I know, that she's in her peak fitness. She's really enjoying life. Being a part of the club, it's a big change for her. Coming, instead of driving an hour and a half every day from her base, I think she's around Meadowbank, around that sort of area.
Hmm.
To Wollongong, she's only have to drive 10 minutes to Concord. So it's a big
Yeah.
lifestyle change for her at
Good
the
time.
moment. So I guess we'll see her best football, I think, this year. So yeah, really excited for the girls and we're excited for round one.
Yeah, Brooke is one that seeing her in the trial, I thought she did an amazing job. So they actually played the trial over three 25-minute thirds as opposed
Yeah,
to two 35-minute halves. And so the starting 13 basically just played the first 25 minutes, then they all came off. They were all showered and on the bench before, even halfway through the next 25 minutes. So there was only a few of them. So Salma and Bass, and there was one or two other girls out of the starting 13 that sort of did a couple of more minutes out there, but it was pretty much the remainder of the squad that played the last 50 minutes of the game, and Brooke played pretty big minutes, and it was, gosh, I think she said it was 429 days or something since that Cronulla game where she injured herself. And I saw her on Monday at Concord and asked her how the body pulled up, and she said that she was feeling great, which is a really good sign after coming off that long off the field. And I think maybe they're just giving her another week or two before they get her in. But I think she's the type of player that I sort of have dubbed her the super sub, but I know she could also quite easily start, but she can just fill so many positions on the
yeah,
field that she would be a great one to keep in that squad somewhere to cover if needed. And Christian, I absolutely love the ground that Christian walks on, the offloads that she gets away. She was leading the competition with offloads before she got injured again last year. And as I've sort of said, I could talk about these girls, for hours because I just think that they're all amazing. And I really hope that this year they get the success that they deserve because it has been a hard couple of years. So speaking of that, where realistically do you think you could see the Tigers finishing this year?
Um, I actually predicted exactly what they'll do last year, and I want to bet. I want to stake bet on it with someone from the club last year. So, look, the reality is it's going to come down to health. I think health is going to play a big factor in any part of the game. I mean, if they can keep, I think there's a couple of things. If Lasana fires and Ray fires, they on their own can win football games, in my opinion. And they have the class from a halves perspective where they will trouble teams. The question mark is, can they do it? Um, when you look at some of the rosters in the competition, you sort of worry about, where they're going to be able to compete week in, week out. I think some of our signings that we've signed, I think they're, from a name perspective, we've done a good job. But the reality is, I don't think there's been consistency from those players over the last couple of years. I think they're going to have to, they've come to the club. There's a lot of expectation, and we're going to have to see it from them.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it's going to come down to the health of the squad. But yeah, reality from my perspective is, I think they'll struggle to play finals football. Um, but I'm not going to bet against Ray and Bucky, because I know how good those two are. I think Bucky's one of the best players. Well, she's one of the best footballers I've ever coached, from a natural football perspective. We didn't get to see the best out of her last year, and I don't think ever since we've come into the NRLW, we've allowed her to have the opportunity to play her best football, and that's an argument for another day. But yeah, it's going to be tough, and I'm going to not make any predictions. I'm sorry, Kelly, because
Mhm.
I want to see how they go first, and it's a
Yeah.
little bit harder in the men's game. I want to see what the first couple of weeks look like. I
Mhm.
want to see the style of football they play. I mean, the current coach, I actually got to coach against him a few years ago, and I'm not sure how the style they're going to play, and whether it's a little bit different to what he's coached in the past. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they play the first couple of rounds. But yeah, if they can somehow sneak into the finals and play finals football, to me that'll be a successful year for them.
Yeah. Off to wooden spoons. I think, the sky's the limit really when it comes to, you know, in terms of the window of opportunity for improvement is the biggest of any team because of that particular reason. So, um, I yeah, talking to a few of the guys last night, and it's just like we just want to see them be competitive. We just want to see them get in and have a crack every week. And if we can walk away from a couple of games with a win, it's going to be better than it was last year.
Well, no, I want to see them win the comp. I mean, I don't want
Yeah,
them to.
well, so does Ke
I
well,
don't. I
that's what
don't want
Kesley
them.
said too.
I
Yeah.
don't. I don't want them to be competitive. The reality is, I've I've watched a lot of the commentary around them in preseason, and watched their docos, and watched some of the interviews, and that concerns me. I mean, that's why the women's game is not one of those things where, I don't think it's similar to the men's game in how you build it. You can turn a team into a premiership team overnight. I mean, the gap between the good and the bad is so different. Now, yes, the top two teams probably have too good a rosters to be able to compete with them. However, you can approach things a little bit different from a mindset perspective. And I don't want to hear us, and I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about in general. I don't want to hear us talking about, we just want to compete. We just want to, do people proud. I want us to go after teams. I want us to
Mhm.
not worry about names and who teams have got. We want to approach it with a little bit more aggression and play that side of football that, tells teams that they're going to have to try to beat us. We're not going to try to go out there and try to just not lose. We want to try to win games, and you're going to have to beat us. And I want to see a little bit more confidence out of our club and out of our program over the next 4 to 5 weeks. And yes, that'll help if we start the year well. But I just want to see a change in mindset, because I think you can change. You can perform with confidence just through your mindset. And I think that's just one of those things that I want to see us improve. And I want to see the commentary around it improve as well. I don't think we need 3 years and 4 years and 5 years to build from our pathways. You can do it with a roster and how you approach and your mindset to approach the game. So, yeah, I just want to see that confidence lift from everybody at the club. I don't think it's been there for the last 2 years. So I definitely want to see it improve this year, and I hope it does.
Yeah, nice. So speaking of pathways, we'll do a quick recap of the Harvey Norman game from last week and talk really quickly about the game for this week. But in round three, the girls went down to the Bunnies, who are now undefeated in the competition. They're not sitting at the top based on for and against, I don't believe, but the final scoreline was 32-14. The first half was fairly even, sort of end-to-end footy. We went into halftime actually up 14-12, but then sort of during the second half, our middle forwards, who were doing really good job in the first half, just started to tire, just started to make a lot of errors. And there was almost three sets in a row where we made an error in their half and they led to tries. So the Bunnies literally ran away with it in the second half. And the score didn't really reflect how we, well, it didn't reflect how we played in the first half. It was really, yeah, really, really disappointing second half. There's lots of the areas like Rach mentioned in last week's pod that a similar kind of thing happened, is that there were a lot of errors, really fundamental errors in the second half where they played really well for the first 40 to 50 minutes and then it all sort of fell apart and the other side ran away with it in the end. The completion rate on the weekend was only 58% of the ball. Sorry, only 58%. So Rach was really impressed though with Dawn Tui, who was actually moved up from the Tasha Gale competition into the Harvey Norman side, and she started her first game in that grade. And also Sage, she was really impressed by Sage, who was able to get a try as well. So this weekend, as I mentioned, we're playing Parramatta, kicking off at 3 o'clock in Kellyville. Parramatta where are they? They are sitting above us on the ladder with a win last week to the Bulldogs, where Freedom Crichton Rapati scored 4 tries. And Rach also included the fact that she is Brian To'o's niece, just, for special interest piece. Tess Staines will be in the 5'8" position in that game as well. So a name we all know very well here at the Tigers. But Parramatta are only coming off 2 wins and a loss, whereas the Tigers are now 2 losses and a draw. So have you had a chance to see any of the Harvey Norman games yet this year?
Yes, unfortunately, I'm a sicko and I watch it all. Yeah, no, well, I think the big difference, and I'm interested to see what happens this week because we've named our Harvey Norman side and none of the NRLW girls are in it.
No,
So
I
the
was
girls are
really
in that game.
confused by that as well. Like Bo
And we
starting
haven't
in
played.
fullback for the Knights, and
Oh,
yeah, I was
don't
like,
start me on that. Don't start me on that. But no, like we've also chosen not to play any of our sort of our extended squad in any of the Harvey Norman games yet. So Parramatta have played. I mean, there was a couple of weeks there. Parramatta played like some first teamers in their Harvey Norman squad. So
yeah, I was really confused
um,
about that.
yeah, but that's just a club decision. But yeah, there's been some interesting decisions the club has made actually over the last 12 months. I mean, Lucy hasn't played a game, has played one game of Tasha Gale this year and hasn't played any Tasha Gale games, and then, sorry, any Harvey Norman games and hasn't been picked this week. So it's made no sense to me
Mm.
how they're how they've approached some of these development sort of situations. But they, I think, are struggling a little bit with, and it's always been the thing with us with our Harvey Norman since the Harvey Norman program has come in. It's just that little bit of depth in regards to sort of that next crop of players. You mentioned Dawn Tui. Dawn Tui would be my starting hooker in NRLW if I was the NRLW coach. FYI, I tried to get her to play Tasha Gale with us at 14. Yeah.
Wow,
She's the best young player I've ever seen in the women's game. That's how good
incredible.
she is. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that moving forward for the rest of this year. Because if unless they actually do it, I'd be surprised. I mean, I'd like to think they play the girls in Harvey Norman week in week out. I don't. I hope they're not sort of not hoping not to play them. I'm presuming
Mm,
they've just named the team because in New South Wales Rugby League, it's not the same as the NRL. You don't have to name actually everybody. You can just bring people in the last minute. So it's a little bit different with the rules.
right.
Um, so I'm hoping all those girls, your ones that are sort of not in the 17 can actually play on Sunday. The only other thing I'm presuming is potentially they've decided that they're going to have all the girls at the first game and not make them play, Harvey Norman. Which if they're doing that, sorry, that's ridiculous. But yeah, it's an interesting one, and the Harvey Norman girls need that little bit of support as well. So yeah, it's unless we are in on the inside, we don't really know what the plan is with
Yeah.
that. But yeah, there's some really talented young players in that squad, and yeah, I think we'll see some good things. I think Modesty's been playing in the centres for them. She's a
Hmm.
really good outside back as well. Trying to think who else in that squad. Yeah, I can't really remember anyone from the youngers. I think Jules in that squad as well, part of it was a part of our Tasha Girl and Lisa Fiola over the last couple of years. So
Mm.
yeah, there's a couple of girls that have come through our system that are playing at that level that are still sort of 18. I think Dawn's actually only 17. She's still
Yeah,
a Lisa Fiola player,
yeah.
so she's still a little bit young. And I'd say that's the reason why she's not in our NRLW squad because she's not 18 yet, so can't actually be eligible to play. That's the only thing I'd be saying that they'd be stopping her from doing that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just hopefully those girls get to bounce back and they get a bit more strength in that Harvey Norman squad for the rest of the year.
Yeah. So apart from that, is there anything else you think they should, just from watching those couple of games, things that you can see that they need to work on in order to turn things around?
I just think, it's probably one of those things. The more football they get to play at that level, I think the South Sydney side are a very seasoned team. So a lot of senior girls who've played a lot of senior football. So, yeah, I just think that's all it's going to be a bit more week in, week out football playing at that level. They'll see that improvement and having those senior players coming back will help them as well, for sure. There's a lot
Yeah.
of young girls in that Harvey Norman squad.
Yeah. Yeah. Rachel's mentioned that a few times. She's definitely more across the Harvey Norman side than I am. So but all right, let's jump and talk for the last 10 minutes or so about the men's game. So as we mentioned on Sunday, we made the trip up to Newcastle, couldn't come home with the 2 points, going down to the Knights 12-6, literally in the dying minutes of the game. Um, Before we get to the spark, frustration, and talking point, you've actually already mentioned this as well, but was there anything really burning that you would like to mention? Because you normally do your critique of each try on Coach's Corner. Was there anything that you would have spoken about in particular with Eddie on Sunday night about that game?
But no, I think it was just missed opportunities. I mean, we all talked about it was a low scoring game. The Knights were slowed down with the weather as well. I think we created the more opportunities. I know Rob was highly critical of our tackle five options, and I can't really disagree with him too much. But it's just that was one of those games. I remember there was a game against the Knights it would have been actually 2011 or 2010. We wore the striped West jerseys on the night, and I think Benji had an absolute blinder. But it reminded me of one of those games as well. And sometimes it is like that up in Newcastle, where you get those low scoring games, and you just got to take those opportunities, and we didn't. But I thought for the majority of the game, we actually defended pretty well. Losing Taylor obviously never helped us. Hamasi didn't have the best game, and struggled a little bit on that left edge defensively, but. Look, all in all, I can't really criticise the boys. I mean, like I said before, they're probably down on confidence. A lot of them are banged up at the moment, and are playing with injuries. So I'm not going to be too harsh on them, which wouldn't be a surprise to Rob or the boys because they call me too positive too much. But yeah, it's just one of those things I think from the weekend where you just got to sort of just say it was one that we probably lost more so than Newcastle won. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So each week, Rach and I do our spark, our frustration, and our talking point. So the spark is the moment, the player, or the effort that gave you confidence in the side.
Um, oh, you know what? I don't know. I haven't watched any of the pods this week. I don't know if anyone mentioned this. It was actually when Jareem dropped the bomb of when they scored that last try. He drops the bomb and then he actually gets up and he sprints and makes the effort to almost get back there on Bradman Best. In saying that, what he did do as well that pissed me off. Am I allowed to say pissed me off on here?
You can say that. Rach swore last week. So,
Okay. Was when he actually helped Kalen Ponga up as well at the same time, which
oh,
Dream, just leave him alone. But yeah, I'm not a good sport. So yeah, but that was probably the moment where I went, you know what, that tells me a lot about Jareem and who he is because just he doesn't die on a play and just watch someone else to do a job. He'll keep playing till the play stops. So that's probably the moment for me.
yeah, for Rach, it was the strip that AD did on Dane
Okay,
Gagai.
that was
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. He just needed that one extra step in order to get through and get over the line. But yeah, that was a pretty. We were there was about six of us at the OG, the four of us. So Rach, Gary, Steve, and I. And I think we made enough noise for a full OG on a Leichhardt game. We were screaming that loud at that particular point. The next bit is the
What's
frustration. So,
yours?
oh, what's mine? Mine was Adam Dewey as well. So
Okay.
I just thought we needed him back this week. I still think he did miss a few opportunities. There were a few times where we had an overlap and it's like, Adam, just pass the ball. But anyway, the frustration. So the play, the decision, or the pattern that had you shaking your head.
Oh, geez, there was a lot of them, wasn't
Mm.
there? I, Look, I'm going to give Newcastle credit for this, even though it frustrated me. They actually did a good job when Hamasi picks up the loose ball and runs 85 metres and Kalen tackles him. It's a six to go call, right? And in most cases, that should be a penalty. It should be a sin bin. I think why the referees didn't do it, watching it back on replay, is because, and I give the Knights a lot of credit for this, the whole Knights line actually got back to the try line. So I have to give them a little bit of credit. But from my end, I just turn around and think to myself, the frustration is if it was the other way around, would our guy have gone to the bin? And would it have been the massive turning point in the game? So there you go. There's a little bit of negativity from me, but yeah, that's probably my frustration to sit there and go, would it have been the same if it was the other way around?
Yeah, that was Rachel's frustration. She
Yeah.
literally said, "Why wasn't this a penalty, a professional foul? But does it also highlight the lack of speed in our backs? Should Makasini actually have outrun Kalen Ponga?"
Yeah, I mean potentially, but that two things. One is about the will and the want in that situation, and Ponga's not slow. I mean that's probably
Yeah.
something we've got to understand. And the other thing is, and it's important for people to understand this, that when you run with a football and you're not running with a football, you're always going to be that little inch quicker. But yeah, maybe Hamasi's. We've never really seen Hamasi out in the clear with speed. We've seen him with power, so we
Hmm.
don't really know how quick he actually is. So that's probably might have been his top speed for all we know.
Yeah. So mine was actually the use of the bench. I was questioning why we put Latu out over Josesi, especially when we could see towards that in that second half, their middle forwards weren't, there was holes everywhere. And I just feel that we saw when Josesi debuted that he was able to do a lot of things similar to Appy, where he could pick up those lazy markers and find those gaps. And I just felt like we could have used a little bit of that craftiness in that particular time where Latu he's great with service, but he's just not quite as quick off the mark as Appy and Josesi, I feel, in that hooker position.
My theory with that, and I've explained this to Rob, and Rob's stubborn, so he doesn't listen, is they wanted to make three changes, but only use two. And what I mean by that is they must have been planning to only take Uppy off for 5 minutes and just give him a really quick breather. And what you can do in that situation is you're always going to put Latu on to probably play back end 13, is my theory. So what they do is they'll sacrifice that 5 minutes of Latu playing nine. And then when Uppy comes back on, he comes back on for a middle forward. So you've used three players changing, but only used two interchanges, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So that would be my thing. And I think the reason they would have done that is because they had to sacrifice a normal rotation interchange for Talon. So that can sort of flip your rotation. So that's my only explanation to it. But yeah, I mean, it's beautiful for us always in hindsight because we sit there and
hmm
we go, maybe if we made this change, it would have been different. I argue with the boys about it all the time with interchange. I'll never question the interchange because, at our club at the moment, I'm responsible for interchange. So,
yeah,
and that's probably the other thing that we don't understand. Like, if you're a South Logan Magpie, geez, I'm owning up to myself right now. If you're a South Logan Magpie fan in the Q Cup, you can't blame Carmichael for the interchange because I do the interchange, and it might be the same at our club. For all we know, probably John Morris is doing the interchanges. So it's one of those things where I know how hard it is in the moment on the spot to figure out that you're interchange, to make a change, and also know how many we've got left, who's on the
yeah,
bench, and who you want to get back on. So it's not as easy as just going, let's make that change now. There is a lot more that goes to it. So yeah, but it's fair enough. We're allowed to have that opinion, aren't we, as fans?
yeah, that's right. And the last one is the talking point. So the thing everybody should be discussing or questioning after the game.
Um, oh, that's a good one. So I think it's not so much a talking point; it's probably a point. I think we've learned that Stafford will stay on the wing. I don't think I see the team has been announced this week. Actually don't think that'll matter. I think they're just naming them in their jersey numbers, so they don't have to change jerseys and sizes. That's my theory. We'll see if it's true. So that's a talking point. I think they're going to keep Stafford on the wing for the rest of the year, and Tito will play right centre. That's probably actually, you know what? That'll be my talking point. I think that's going
Okay.
to be the talking point, that I think they'll keep those positions, even though they keep naming them in those numbers. That's my theory and my talking point. So we'll see if I'm
Yeah.
right.
Okay. So Rachel and I have a very similar talking point, and it probably comes up more often after a loss, especially a close loss like this one. But So Rachel's question is, how much does our lack of depth affect our strength between the ears? So are the results of this year just related to injuries and depth, or do we need to be stronger mentally in those kinds of games?
To me, yeah, we've got the worst depth in the competition. I even think the teams like the Dragons, who I don't think it's depth, I think that's just their roster as a whole. I think our gap between our 18 to 30 or 19 to 30, I think is the biggest of any team in the competition. So I think it's definitely our depth. I think it's the drop in our players once you go past player 18, unfortunately. And not to say that those guys can't have the good game here and there, but I think from a consistency perspective, I think that's where we struggle. So I think it's a very good talking point from you guys because I think it's a really important one.
Yeah, it's something that we've spoken about a lot is, does the club have a full-time sports psychologist that can be working with the players with these kinds of things?
They do. They've got a guy by the name of Phil Jonty. He actually is our psychologist. He works with multiple clubs, so he's not full
Okay.
time. He works with multiple clubs. He's a Wayne Bennett guy. He's always been with Wayne Bennett. So I'm guessing Benji's got him along to be a part of that. But yeah, he did actually some stuff with us earlier this year. He's a brilliant mind, I'll say that.
Mm.
I took a lot out of it. I've been seeing him a lot in the sheds in our games, but you'll see him actually at Rabbitohs games as well. So they do have someone who does that as well. So yeah, he's an American fella. So
Okay,
yeah.
cool. There you go. So looking ahead to this weekend, so we are playing the Dragons on Saturday afternoon at 5:30 out at Jubilee Stadium. So there's been a couple of changes to the side. Firstly, with Jerome Luai being ruled out due to delayed concussion symptoms, a lot of people didn't read the email or see the writing that went around the team list, and there were many people questioning why he was out. So we're seeing Jock Madden come back into the halves with Adam this time. Alex Twell's also been named for his return from knee injury. He was named last week but didn't play, so hopefully he'll get that start again this weekend. Hamasi Makasini will start in the center's position after replacing Talon. And then we have Jarrell Skelton coming onto the wing, I think,
Yeah.
as well. So, and yeah, as you mentioned, Stafford is named in the centers and Taruva is named on the wing, but you believe that that's just, won't be how they run out
Well,
on Saturday?
you don't want to waste the jersey. So their jersey sizes and their fittings, they probably don't want to waste the jerseys. It's the same as why Bunty keeps getting named on the bench and starting.
Right.
Yeah,
No,
that'd be
that's
the
because I
jersey.
told Benji that's what he should have done. That's what I said in the pod.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, so what? Yeah, do you have any big concerns going into this
Oh,
game with
oh,
this team?
yeah, I do. Oh, not the team. I just had from a mental perspective. I hope they turn up this week not thinking they're playing with the Dragons and thinking that's the bottom of the table club because the reality is if you probably compare the two teams over the last 4 or 5 weeks, if anything, you probably say we're at equal standard of how the type of football we've been playing. So I think we've got to turn up there with a ruthless mindset and try to say, well, these guys are at the bottom of the ladder. We need to keep them there. We don't need to look at them like they're at the bottom. We need to look at them like they're our equals. We've got to make sure that we aren't the second team they beat this year. So, yeah, that's a big thing I think for me this week. This is going to be probably one of the bigger challenges. I know there's been weeks we've been beaten by extensive scorelines against some of the good teams, but I think this is the biggest danger game for us in the next couple of weeks for
Mm,
sure.
yeah, no, I agree. Who needs to have a big game this week, or who needs to have the biggest improvement from last week?
Improvement wise, I think everybody from an attack perspective. I mean, I've always been of the belief that if Uppy's playing really well, I think we're a big chance of winning. So when he has a big influence on the game, I think it means we're a big chance of winning. And I think Adam, his second game back again is just so important to us. Again, it's not about him improving. I just think naturally his second game back. I think this will be a game that he plays really well. So I'd say they're the two important ones, but maybe Adam more so than Uppy for sure.
Okay, nice. Do you have a score prediction?
Dragons 22, Tigers 24. I was
Oh,
deciding whether to go 20 or 24. I'm trying to do a little bit of reverse psychology at the moment because everything else is not working, but
yeah,
let's go 24-22 our way.
24-22. Okay, God, that's too close for my liking. So I'll go 26-12. A little bit more of a buffer, but I don't normally do score predictions. Rach knows
Me
that I hate
neither.
doing them.
If the boys ask me, let's just say, I would have told them to go get stuff. So I will never tell you to go get stuff, Kel.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, this Saturday, for anybody that is heading out to the game, Sean has put the call out to people to get out there because of exactly what you said. We need a big game this weekend. We need to, um, you know, the boys, we need to get behind the boys so that they know that we don't believe that the season's over yet. We need to get out there. So there will be a supporter meetup at the Beverly Park Golf Club, starting at about 2 o'clock, from about 2 till 4:30. Sean will be there from about 3:30, and then the plan is for everybody to walk up to the stadium together. There is a code that you can get 10% off tickets for this particular game, which is 26 away. So 10% off, and then it also allows you to purchase into the supporters bay, which is Bay X, which is a little bit interesting. But most of that, about half of that bay is already sold. We've bought, the Ambush has bought 12 tickets, so we'll be there. There'll be Maddie G will be there, NRL Fanatic will be there. There's a lot of creators that'll be in that bay, so make sure if you're going, use that code, grab those tickets, or even just grab a GA ticket and hang around in the space behind that bay. But Adele, do you have any last parting words before we sign off this
Yeah,
afternoon?
can on that march to the ground, can we get Gary on the front with a drum, please?
So
That'd be
Gary's actually unfortunately not coming. So he's the one ambush crew guy that's not going to be there. But Troy will be there, and Troy loves to make some noise. So
well, I think Eddie said he's going to make his appearance. So if Eddie makes his appearance, can
ah,
you just make sure every time he's negative, just clip him on the back of the ear,
yes,
please?
I will do that for sure. But thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I've had a great time chatting all things women's game and finding out a little bit more about your history. And yeah, really, really appreciate you coming on board. And we'll have you back on throughout the season to do a bit of a mid-year check-in to see how the girls are going.
Yeah, let's hope they start the year well. I really want them to succeed. I mean, everyone always talks to me about what I feel about the club and how I feel. I mean, regardless of the situation and whatnot, I just want them to win football games, and you want them to succeed, and that's all I want from them this year. So, whilst ever this the I've got to do this because my tradition, the 6 and the 7 in Lasana and Ray are our halves. I think we're a big chance of winning football games every single week. So, fingers crossed those two stay on the park, and we're a big chance, I reckon.
Amazing. Well, thank you again. And to everybody that's listening this afternoon, thank you so much. And stay tuned for next week when we are hopefully reviewing the NRLW girls' first big win of the year. So thanks, everybody, and go the Tigers.